Hi, everyone, and welcome to training tape number 5, the final training tape for the 2024-25 basketball season, being brought to you by the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance. We've made it through another exciting basketball season, and our final training tape will give us some good topics to keep in mind as we go into the last few weeks of our seasons. Just a few disclaimers before we start today's training tape. This tape is a product of the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance and does not constitute any official instruction given by the WIAA or the NFHS. This video does not provide any official certification. This is just an extra resource that our association is putting out there to help officials improve as they go through their seasons. The videos and comments made in this tape are meant for a three-person high school crew. There are a few clips today that are from college level games, but we will still focus on NFHS, three-person high school mechanics and rules. No video or comment made in this training tape is intended to call out or degrade any players, officials, coaches, or teams in any way. The content that we put into these tapes is intended to strictly look at plays and situations to help officials improve during the basketball season. And this film is an individually created resource by our association and strictly intended for educational purposes only. I appreciate those who have reached out to me with clips to either share or talk about, or clips to eat for me to even use during my creation of these tapes. So I really appreciate people who have reached out. But if you ever need to get a hold of me for any comments, questions, or concern, please feel free to reach out to me at my email listed below. My name is Kent Meehee. I am a WOAA member, and I'm also a member of the Wisconsin River Officials Association, acting as our co chair for basketball. And as I mentioned before, we are officially at the end of our season. March is just around the corner, and we've made it through the trials and tribulations of another season. We've had some long nights on the road, and some of us making long drives to and from games. We've had fun and exciting games that we've been a part of, and everything in between. So now that we've made it to March, all the other teams are getting ready for their big dance. This is the most important part of their seasons. So we need to make it the most important part of ours as well. We need to be at our best and just be ready to put a cap on what has been another great basketball season. If you haven't, please go back and watch our other 4 training tapes from this year. You can search WOAA basketball training tape on YouTube, and that will hopefully help you get some tips and look at some things to focus on as we look at our last few weeks of the season and going into the playoffs. And with that being said, that is our last topic that we're going to focus on for this year is end of season officiating. We're going to talk about 3 key things to keep in mind with these high stakes games with a lot of things on the line as we move forward. We're going to look at how we manage physical play, just a few reminders on some important late game mechanics to keep in mind. And then how do we handle emotions with these, again, these high stakes games that are physical, and fans are going to be into it, players and coaches are going to be into it. So, how do we handle all the emotions that are going to be going on in these games that we'll experience moving forward into these next couple weeks? So, the first 3 clips that we're going to look at deal with managing physical play. So, what I want to focus on with this first point is that we still need to do our job as officials. In these high stakes games, we still need to have the courage to call fouls. That is our job. However, what we're going to look at is what do we call versus what do we allow to happen. Now, again, I'm not saying we're just going to go out there and swallow our whistles and not make calls. We need to call fouls. However, we can't get lured into calling incidental and legal contact. We're going to have games that have really athletic players, and they're going to be fast moving and at a high pace. So there's going to be a lot of incidental and legal contact happening when we have drives to the basket and when we have good athletic players guarding each other. So we need to just have a good understanding of what needs to be called with illegal contact, and maybe those little bumps that happen in the midst of a game, can we allow that to happen to promote game flow? If we're calling every little bump and push that we see, there's not going to be a lot of game flow. And we have to just make sure that we stay patient and see the entire play, because that little bump that happens in the course of a game, it may not affect the play. Um, it may not have any big impact on what's going on in the play. So we just need to be aware of incidental and legal contact that occurs and be able to, discern what is a foul and what's not. So on this first clip, we're going to have a drive to the basket and maybe a little bit of contact on a shot, going off of that rebound. So when we look at that play, again, there may be a little bit of contact. It seems like the defenders maybe tap the ball, but is there truly a hard foul? Is the player not able to get their shot off? It does look like, this play is allowed to continue on. And is there maybe a little contact on the play? There may be, but overall, it does seem like the player just gets bumped a little bit. There's some slight contact. And again, this is one where we have to just discern, is there illegal contact on this play? Is this a play where we can just allow the play to move on? And the player underneath the basket has both of their hands legal. The player from behind looks to tap the ball on the shot. So again, is there maybe some contact there? It looks like it, but is this one where we need to come in and disrupt the flow of the game and call a foul? Um, Now, the officials obviously on the court have a different angle than what we have on film. But again, this is one where maybe we can let this one go and it doesn't affect the flow or impact like the overall play that we're seeing. This is another example of just being patient on the whole play that we see here. So there's an attempted drive by the white player, and maybe we see he loses his balance and falls to the floor. We do have to, not only do we need to just see the whole play through, but we have to ask ourselves, does the defender do anything wrong in this play? So when white first gets the ball, yep, it looks like red is playing some pretty aggressive defense, but does the white player fall because they were deliberately pushed, or did they just happen to get off balance because red was guarding them so closely? So these are just, again, little conversations that we need to have with ourselves as we see the whole play start, develop, and finish. So in this case, yeah, is there a little contact between that matchup? Yeah, there may be, but is it illegal? Is it contact that is really affecting the overall play? It may not be. So again, having a patient whistle, and if we determine that this play is a foul, like I said before, we need to come in and call this foul. But it does seem that white maybe just loses their balance and they weren't pushed to the floor. So again, just understanding the difference between legal contact versus incidental and versus any contact that we would have to call a foul on. This is another play where if we look at the scoreboard, we've got a late second or a last second shot. We have a tie game. There's a lot of high emotions on this play. So again, we need to slow ourselves down, referee the defense, and see if there's any illegal contact where we have to call a foul. And we can see as white drives to the basket, both of the red defenders jump vertically. They stay legal, they maintain their verticality, and there is contact on this shot. We can see that from the video. However, that does not constitute illegal contact. Uh, the white player goes into the red defender, and the red defender is legal. White doesn't displace them at all. So, when we have these late game, high intensity shots, when the score is close and the game is tied, You know, we're not going to just swallow our whistle and not call a foul. However, we need to just be seeing this whole play through and understand that, yep, there's contact, but by rule, there is no illegal contact, and we correctly let this play out. And again, this crew just does a nice job of staying patient and seeing the entire play before determining what comes next. And this is a late game situation. So we are going to talk about in the next clip just a few things to keep in mind as we see some of these late game situations. So some of those late game mechanics that we have to keep in mind, and usually there's a timeout before maybe the last possession of a game. So some things to talk about with your crew and to pregame before a game that you may have coming up either in the at the end of the season or in the postseason. What is our game situation? Do we are the teams tied? Uh, if they're tied, well, then we know that a team may be looking to drive to the basket, and we have to just anticipate that drive to the basket so we can adjudicate any contact that happens. If there is, if a team is down by 3, then we probably know that we need to keep an eye on shooters at all times and make that a priority. We need to understand who has the clock on a last second shot. Are the teams in the bonus? Do teams have timeouts left? Is the coach going to call a timeout? So things in that nature that all have to go in our heads as we officiate a late game situation. So the first thing I want to look at with this late game play is any is kind of what we talked about in the first few clips. Any contact that happens on the shot. So we can see that red drives into the lane and dishes it off to the her teammate, and it does seem like the white player is maybe going into the back, but does that really affect the shot? And I would argue that it does not affect the shot in this case. So the white defender again is pushing slightly in the back of the red shooter. And we'll watch that one more time before we move on to our other mechanics. But again, this is marginal contact on the shot, and it's probably a good one to pass on because it does not affect the red player making the shot. The other thing we need to keep in mind is the positioning of the crew. Now, the crew does a nice job. The trail especially does a nice job of stepping down on this play. The center is at home base, and the lead has a nice wide angle on that dish off. So they do a nice job there. The trail in this case is opposite the table, so the trail has main priority of the clock, especially on this last second shot. So some things to keep in mind on this are the fact that the white team, the home team, does have a timeout left. So we need to be aware that if there is a made shot, we need to have eyes on the clock to see if any time is remaining. And we need to make sure that the coach is granted their timeout as soon as possible. So the trail, they do have clock responsibility. But even the center could have eyes down on the other end of the court to see if the home coach would want to call a timeout after the made basket. So, again, these are all things to keep in mind as we have these late second shots. So, this is one good thing to pregame before your games towards the end of the season. Understand and talk about who has responsibility for the clock, for the coach, and understand just the situation at the end of a game. So this is something you can pregame. This is also something that you can talk about maybe at the one of the last few timeouts that happen in your game. So just being on the same page and communicating all of that with your crew. The final clips that we're going to talk about are managing player emotions and understanding plays of consequence. So, with these playoff games that we're going to have, these games mean more to the coaches, to the fans, and to the players. So, we need to understand that these games are going to include a lot of high emotions. There, this tape is coming out during the last week of the boys' regular season in Wisconsin. So, there are still some conference titles that might be on the line. The girls are starting their playoff games tomorrow, and some of these players are going to be playing in their last game ever. And we're going to have some seniors that are ending their careers in the coming weeks. So there's going to be a lot of high emotions with a lot of these games. So us as officials, we have to understand how we control our emotions. Our emotions have to be of higher importance to others. We cannot let fan reaction, coach or player reactions to influence how we respond and influence our emotional uh, homeostasis, I guess, if you think of it that way. We need to stay even keel and calm to be able to handle those high intensity situations. When we talk about plays of consequence, and that ties into dead ball officiating as well, if things are ignored, if player interactions are not addressed, if we do not see how players are talking to each other or if players are getting away with things, what door have we opened for ugly things to walk through is kind of how I put that. If we ignore a negative player interaction, that is going to maybe open up a can of worms for something more not good, for lack of a better term, to happen later in the game. So we need to make sure that we address behaviors and adjudicate consequential situations that could have a ripple effect if not taken care of. So we're going to look at some of those plays now. So this is a really tough play to look at, mostly because we're in transition. As a crew, in general, we're sometimes vulnerable in transition because there's so every player is moving so fast. We can see that there's a steal, so we might be coming behind the play. So these plays in transition are sometimes difficult to get right. But what we want to focus on is the contact that happens kind of in the middle of your screen. We can see that the pink player runs over and sticks an elbow right into the upper body of the white player. Um, this is a play, there's emotion, there's probably something that led to that contact being made from the pink player. This definitely needs to come in and either be adjudicated as an intentional foul, or we could even give a, or yes, this would be an intentional foul in this case, on the pink player. And this play, when we talk about the coverage of this, we would like to see the lead come in and grab this foul. This it's kind of going right down the middle of the court, but if we can see the center has eyes on that on ball matchup, so their priority is on the ball handler. The lead is off of that matchup, so their eyes just need to be aware of other players in that area that the center might not have, any opinion on. Um, but when we talk about plays of consequence, by letting this, I won't say we're letting it go, but by not seeing this play and by not getting this play in this case, this could have a ripple effect for the remainder of the game. The white player might look to retaliate later in the game because the pink player got away with that cheap shot, that illegal contact. Um, and again, we don't want to open the door to more bad things happening later in the game. So this is a tough play to get because we're in transition, but we want to make sure we address that and not have any other things come up later in the game. And this next clip is also going to address things of that nature as well. So we can see we have the ball going out of bounds, but then we now have a dead ball situation where the black player uh, is given a technical foul for clapping in the face of the white player. But what I want you to focus on is what the white player does after the fact. So we see that the black player is clapping in the face of the white player and they're assessed a technical, but we can see that the white player also claps back at the black player. So what do we want to focus on with this play? Again, what is the play of consequence? if the white player is not assessed a technical foul, their behavior is being allowed. And we don't want them to get away with certain things like that in the game. So the black player, we can see again, black players clapping in the face of the white player, and they're if we don't address that, then we know, we're just waiting for something to explode. So the lead official does a good job of giving the black player a technical. However, the white player, this also needs to be addressed. Whether we talk to that player or we also assess a technical foul on the white player for clapping back in the face of the other player. However you want to adjudicate this, but this needs to be addressed. This is a play of consequence. If the white player's behavior is not addressed, this again could allow them to feel like they're getting away with clapping in the face of an opponent, and that high emotion might come back to lead them to do something that is not good. So again, we do a nice job of assessing a technical for unsporting behavior, but we also need to keep eyes on players at all times to catch any other bad behavior that's going on. And we see our center official does a nice job of coming into the play and just making sure no other interaction can happen on the technical foul. So just during dead ball officiating, there's player emotions and interactions can happen. So we need to make sure we address those and adjudicate and assess necessary technical fouls to players that are showing unsporting behavior towards one another. Our last play that we're going to look at is an intentional foul that's on a shot. We have a hard foul push in the back, but then we've got some heated exchanges after that hard foul that we have to separate players with. Um, we like the intentional foul here. There's no attempt on the ball, and we can see it's late in the game. The game is kind of decided in terms of points, but then we've got players going at each other, and we've got kind of a scrum. So, what we'd like to see from the center and the lead is to come in a little quicker on this and get in between the players. The trail sees that we have some player interactions that could explode into something worse, so the trail does a nice job of rushing in here to get in front of the players and just get everybody separated. And if we watch the officials, they're staying calm. They're not getting too excited or getting overwhelmed at all. We just have to get in between players and handle the emotions that are in the game. We need to get them separated, and then we have two fouls or two free throws for the shot and two free throws for the intentional. So we need to just come in calmly, make sure we're getting in between players and not allowing anything else to escalate. If we if we don't go in and separate players that interact like that, we we're opening that door for other bad things to happen again. So make sure if emotions are this high, we talk to the players, we separate them, we stay calm, and we just take care of those things right away so nothing else bad comes up. So in closing, for our final training tape of the year, make sure that we see plays start, develop, and finish to have better judgment on contact. There will be contact in all of our games that we have, and we're also going to have some athletic players playing the later we go into the playoffs. So if we see the plays all the way through, we're going to have a better judgment on whether contact is illegal or whether contact is marginal and on the verge of just incidental. We need to communicate, communicate, and communicate some more. And in the tape, we talked about communication and things to think about on last second shots and late game situations. But we also may be working with new people on our crews. So we need to make sure and that we communicate during dead balls, during timeouts, leading up to your games and emailing each other to confirm your contests. We just need to over communicate and be on the same page with our crew. With emotions, we need to be in control of what we can control. We can't let the atmosphere, the emotions get into our heads. We have to stay grounded and control what we can control during the game and just make sure that nothing else bad happens from things that are ignored. And most importantly, with all these things to think about towards the end of the season, we just have to enjoy these fun, exciting games that we're going to have and just work our butts off to do the best job that we can. And I'm very confident that we have the capacity and the ability to do that. And I'm really excited to see and hear about all the great games that we have coming up at the end of the year. So that's our final training tape for the year. I want to thank everyone for tuning in over the last few months. I've enjoyed making this content for you this season, and I look forward to doing more so in the future. So thanks, everyone. Good luck with the rest of your season, and have fun and enjoy these last games coming up in the next few weeks.